This is Uncommonly Remarkable, where we discuss the surprising everyday lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. My name is Artis Beatty. I am a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for MyEyeDr OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and the conversations held here are separate from my work with my eye doctor. Today's guest describes herself as fearless, determined, driven, and passionate. Having spent her career challenging the normal and encouraging others to think differently, Sue Downs is the co-founder and CEO of MyEyeDr, one of the nation's largest groups of full-scope and full-service optometric practices. Founded in 2001 as a single office focused on bringing better selection, service, and clarity to patients in the vision space, MyEyeDr combines the science of optometry with the art of helping patients understand product selection, fashion, and vision insurance in a novel way. Now, some 23 years later, she has led the organization to near 900 locations across the country. In this episode, hear how the youngest of 6 children challenged tradition, how she took an administrative job in an unknown field and looked for opportunities to learn, and how she used life experience to create a concept. Learn how adversity can remove the fear that inhibits success, and how compassion and truly caring for others can fuel an idea. You'll hear how she questioned what was accepted and acceptable, how she asked difficult questions, and much, much more. Ladies, gentlemen, all you remarkable people, please help me welcome Sue Downs to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm very excited. Thank you, Sue, for joining me on the show today.
Of course, I'm honored.
It's so much fun to have you here with me. And when I told you I was going to start doing a podcast, you were like, oh, am I going to be on the podcast? And I was like, I absolutely want you on the show, but I need to practice first. And so here we are in season 2. We've had some practice episodes, and now I feel great having you here. So thank you for that.
And you've come a long ways from not wanting a picture taken to hosting a podcast. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Well, you can't start there without actually telling that story, right? And so for everyone who's out there, Sue and I have now worked together directly for, we're closing on 10 years. And so December will be 10 years total, which is absolutely insane because it's gone really fast. But when we first started working together, Sue would have these conversations with me about, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'd be like, okay, that sounds great to me. And there was this one day that you said, well, we're going to do some marketing and we're going to, we need some test shots. And so I need you to go and do the test shots.
Yep. And you said, please don't make me. I don't have enough time today. And away you went. And then came back the marketing campaign, and you were the center of it. You were everywhere. You were on bus backs. You were at metro stops.
And the funniest thing about the whole situation is before I went to do this thing, I was like, well, I'm going to go do this because Sue asked me to. I should do it. It's going to be great. But we're not going to use any of my photos anyway. I'm just going and I'm going to help everybody else get excited about doing it. And when I came back and the pictures came back, they started showing up on stuff. And before I knew it, I was everywhere. And so there was this game that I would play with colleagues around the country, and it would be spot me wherever. And I would get these pictures back, and I'd be on grocery carts or on the back of a bus and all of these things. And I didn't want to.
Well, when we first started working together, you were really following me. But now I'm following you in the industry, Artis.
Oh, my goodness.
We've made you a true celebrity.
Well, I don't know about that, but I certainly appreciate all the opportunity. So it's hard to have you in the room and even know where to start to talk about all of the amazing things that you've been involved in and really the growth of MyEyeDr, where it started, what inspired you. And so even though we've sat down and we've had a lot of conversation around this, there are lots of people out there, despite the fact that you've been on PBS and in all of the magazines, who may not have heard your story. And so I think it's really important to maybe start in the beginning and really talk about some of the things that have really inspired you, the building of My Eye Doctor. And we'll talk a little bit about where we are today in the future, too.
Absolutely.
So take me back. You are the youngest of six, right?
Yes, the baby.
And you grew up in upstate New York?
Around there, between Pennsylvania and New York. Yeah.
So you're growing up, you've got these siblings. Did you have any idea the Sue of tomorrow would be CEO of My Eye Doctor?
No, I never could have imagined it. I knew I wanted to continue to do something. I wanted to do more. I knew there was something in me that was unsettled. I know that everything my father taught me to do of, go to college, find a good husband, find a good career that can work with a family, I didn't know what to do with that. And so I changed my majors a lot. I changed schools. I just couldn't find my little place, my groove.
That's interesting that you start there, right? So your father is it sounds very traditional. So you're going to find a great husband, you're going to have a happy life, but not necessarily you're going to go and lead a company. How do you reconcile that in your mind? Because I think there may be lots of people who are being influenced by others to say, this is what you should do, this is how you should do it. And maybe they haven't actually made that departure to start thinking differently.
Well, I think it's a hard journey, right? Because as you know, a lot of things have happened in my life to, I think, get me to where I am today. But I wonder all the time, artists, and I don't know if this answers your question, how much are people truly untapped of their potential because they're fearful, they hold back, they don't really have somebody that's mentored them that you should go in a career path that's different than maybe how you were raised or how you've lived. And then when you find that career, right, how do you make it a calling in life? How do you go beyond just doing it? Because then I think, again, there's all this untapped potential that you have to find.
And that's so true. And you need a lot of sometimes support and to be able to tap that potential. And that support mechanism is not always there. And so for some people, they have it inside to be able to power through, make these decisions, be on their own. And other folks really haven't found that yet.
Right.
And it feels like you were able to tap into that relatively early.
Yeah. And as I think about it, I think the other thing, quite honestly, was there was a lot of people who said, you can't do it. You've got your sights too high. And my sights were us having a great company, taking great care of our patients, helping our associates find a career, and having 50 or 60 offices in the Washington, D.C. market, right? Like I never would have dreamt that we would be as big as we are, as many locations, that I would have lived and, relocated to Raleigh, North Carolina as my main residence. I was talking to my family last night, and we were just talking about how settled we were in D.C. And I said, if COVID hadn't happened, I never would have imagined that I could live someplace other than where our main home office is.
Isn't that something? It did. I think COVID, for all the things that COVID brought us that were not good, I do think there were a lot of things it helped challenge and made us think differently about. And in the wake, I think it made us better just in general.
Yeah, I think if you can find the balance of having a good work-life balance, but at the same time, continuing to pursue your career to the level you want to, I think it opened up a whole bunch of doors for us.
Let's talk a little bit about your beginnings because I think it's pretty amazing. You started working in the profession of optometry by working in an office with doctors.
Yeah, an independent doctor.
And how did that come about?
So going back again, my father really, if he had his way, I would have been a school teacher or a medical assistant, right? And so I had quite honestly dropped out of school for a period of time. I decided to leave upstate New York and come to Northern Virginia, where I had some friends that I knew. And I opened up the Washington Post and it was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. And after 2 weeks of laying at the pool and doing things, I was bored out of my mind and said, I need to get a summer job. And so I literally closed my eyes and circled my finger in the administrative section, because that's what I knew, and landed on a job for an optometrist. And I went and I interviewed that day and got the job and started the next day. And he never asked me, when are you planning? What are you planning to do with school? Are you going to stay in Virginia? Are you going back upstate? What are you going to do? And I went. And it was the best thing I ever had, because it taught me, or one of the best things I ever did for my career, because it taught me all my clinical skills, because he was an independent doctor, because he was practicing every day. And I think he saw the potential in me. So he taught me, whether fitting contacts or teaching INRs or changing the motherboard in a lab equipment or fitting glasses. And the more I did, at the time, we didn't even have a computer system. So I set up a computer system to do his recalls. It was called Nutshell. There was a box of insurance claim forms, vision insurance, in the corner of the office that nobody had filled out because no one quite knew exactly what to do with all of them. So I tackled that and set up, just so many different things that I could do on the administrative and finance, which is where I had also been taking a lot of classes in. And away we went. And then, oddly, one of the doctors that worked for him and his wife were both new graduates from optometry school. And so we used to chat. We used to ride together sometimes. We used to, hang out. And his wife worked for the other co-founder, MyEyeDr, who is now departed from MyEyeDr. But she used to tell me, there's so much more potential in you, and you need to come meet this other co-founder, because you've got all the clinical skills, but we really need help in putting our business together and growing it, and you would be great at doing that. And that was a big step.
And so you take this big step and you go and you meet with this other doctor, and you guys decide, yeah, you should come work for me. I think you could be. Well,
actually, the interviewing process really went awry. Okay, you know him.
I do.
I waited over an hour for my interview. I was trying to figure out who he was, because at the time there was no Google that you could look up and see what his picture looked like or anything. And my doctor's office that I was working at was very traditional. So the doctor never answered the phone or did any of the, helping with dispensing glasses or anything like this. And there was 3 or 4 men working in the office on the day I was interviewing, and everyone was doing all the functions. They were answering phones, they were fitting glasses, they were dispensing, whatever it took. And so I couldn't believe when he came out to get me that he actually did anything that was needed to take care of the patient, right? But then after 5 minutes, he said, "Oh, you're the girl that works with Dr. Bowen. I don't need to talk to you. I'll just call you when we have an opening for you." And so, ultimately, when he first offered me the job, I took it. And then the last day before I was supposed to start, I said, "No, I'm not going to start. I'm going to stay where I'm at, because you didn't interview me. You didn't tell me anything I was going to learn. I don't know what's going on." I feel.
Yeah. So that's a subtle statement, but something I think that's really, really important. He didn't interview you, but he didn't tell you anything that you were going to learn.
Correct.
And that piece is something that I think you have carried with you forever and ever, because today, in the company, you want people to feel like they understand what it is that they are going to learn, and everyone should learn something that's going to make them better at what they do. And so hearing that, it just rings really true for me.
Absolutely. I say all the time, I hope associates find a path with us and they stay with us for their whole entire career, but I know that's not realistic in today's day and age. And I just hope when they depart, they are taking something more than they came with. And I hope they've contributed something more, too, than they expected to.
So what did you learn when you started working with Dr. Salmon?
Well, so the first optometrist that I worked with, again, taught me all the clinical skills. And he taught me a lot of things out of fear. We have resource scheduling today, which is making sure our appointments are filled appropriately with the right patient so we have enough time with each one. The original doctor instilled that in me because he used to scare me when I didn't have every appointment filled. Like he would be like, you need to find someone to fill that spot. And so my job was to keep him away from me and keep him in the exam room. When I started with Dr. Samet, he was definitely an entrepreneur. And while he appreciated the profession, like he was definitely more of a business person. So I think that's where I really started, like taking some of the fundamentals I understood of the profession and then growing from them, right? Thinking about, again, as you said, and I always tell everyone, like thinking a little bit differently. Like not only how can we fill out an insurance claim form, but how could we partner with a vision plan to help our members and patients understand more of what they have and what they're entitled to, or whatever it was.
And so you two worked together to build his practice. It feels like you were learning a lot of the business side of optometry, which was important for practice management and understanding managed vision care, which is all the third-party insurance part. Because during that time, vision insurance was relatively new for a lot of people. So we had been accustomed to health insurance, but vision insurance in the way it was built was new. And so you were on the cutting edge of starting to figure that out.
Yes. And, everything happens in life for a reason. I actually got put into that part of the company. And that was our original company, or his original company, called Our Eyes, which was sold to Eye Care Centers of America, which today is VisionWorks. But no one wanted to handle the managed vision care. And so I ended up, and I went in with the attitude of the sooner I fix this, the sooner I can get back to being in clinic and operations. And then, it turned from just wanting to fix it to actually understanding it and loving it and understanding what a great tool it was for the consumer, for our patients, right? But it works so reverse from traditional insurance in that you're really prepaying for your eyewear, right, and your exam. And I think the consumer is just overall thinking of insurance, what's my copayment? What's my deductible? Do I definitely need this test? Versus I have something that I've earned and I should definitely use it. So yeah, that was amazing. But, he sold that first company and him and I had a 4-year non-compete with each other. And one of the biggest things that happened in my career is I moved to San Antonio and I worked on the national executive team of Eye Care Centers of America, which today I would say was my boot camp. If I hadn't done that, right?
That's interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that you learn from those lessons, right? Like how many times do we not take a chance because we're afraid or it doesn't work? I had a 6-month-old son, right? And a 7-year-old. And so picking up and moving them. And at the time, their father, who was my first husband, decided not to go with us at the last minute, right? So it would have been easy for me to say, okay, I'm not doing this. But I was like, okay, this is going to further my career. This is a great opportunity to learn something new. And then in the time, so that was back in 1997. I think I have that year right. And, there was no women on the executive team. And so between being new in Texas, being new to a business that big, being a female on that, like it was testing.
Boot camp might be the best way to describe that, right?
Yeah, but I'm very thankful for it. I think, I added a lot to the business. I think I did some of the same things, cleaning up some of the systems and contracting and so forth. And then it was just great to be out in the field and have, over 450 offices at the time to understand that the way you had to think about running those was different than the way we thought about 23, 26 offices.
That makes all the difference, and it starts to introduce the concept of scale, which is one of those things that until you've taken the fundamental things that you think are important for a day-to-day business and try to make that work over a large footprint, it changes the way you think about things, right? Like there are some things you just have to learn to do differently because it has to be so big.
Yeah, and you can never get comfortable because if you're going to get comfortable, you're going to stop growing, right?
Right.
I would say a couple other things about that period in my life too. So I was on a team that was being acquired.
Okay.
And everybody was really respondent to what was going on. So they were either liking things, but honestly, the majority of them were complaining. I don't like the benefits. I don't like the schedule. I don't think this is right. And, a gentleman who I've never kept in touch with, Mark Pearson, he came up to me and said, I think you're one of the brightest people here. And I think you should just put your head down, meaning don't react to everything that's going on around you. And I think you should just show how smart you are and how you work and you're the quality of your work. And you're going to go really far. So, I think we all go through times with today's day and age that everything's changing, right? So
Agreed.
your company could be acquired. It could change. Like there's so many different variables that can happen today. And so how you kind of respond to that could kind of direct the future.
Yeah.
One way or another, right?
That's right.
How many people don't give it a chance?
I think that's very, very true because it becomes easier sometimes to say, to heck with this. I'm not going to do this. I've got other opportunities that I can go pursue. And you run the risk of not seeing something through that could be an excellent opportunity for you. And at the very least, not putting your best foot forward, which, for me would be a problem, right? Like I would want to make sure that I was doing my best work, whether that became my permanent home or not. And that helps to demonstrate what you're capable of.
Correct. You want to have your imprint there, right? And it to be a true reflection of who you are and the work you do.
So I guess let's go backwards for a second. So you took the first job, you started to learn about optometry, kind of nuts and bolts. You took the second job, you got really technical around running the business. What was your dad thinking during this time?
Well, he didn't know what to do with me, right? Because when he did come to visit me, so then I moved back to Northern Virginia. My father is visiting me quite frequently because I think Alex, my oldest one, he had worked his whole life, my father. And so Alex was kind of like his first child, if you will. He got to go to soccer games and plays and all that. I think, we almost got into custody over where Alex should go to school at. But he was frustrated with me and he didn't know what to do, right? We were having dinner at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night because I was working. I was coming home to go to soccer practice or play. I was making sure the kids had some time with them to play. And it was it was a different way of living than the way we grew up, where dinner was on the table at 5:30 every night, and it was very consistent. And so I remember one night I actually was going through Kentucky Fried Chicken at like 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And he just looked at me and he said, I don't even know who you are. This is awful. This is ridiculous.
But it's one of those things where you're building a career, and it may not have been traditional, which is kind of, it sounds like what your father was hoping for. Right. But he had to see some of the value in what you were being able to bring and the different experience that your kids were having that he got to be involved in.
And I know, it's sad for me because my father passed away right before we opened My Eye Doctor, but he kind of motivated me, as one of the key ingredients of My Eye Doctor. But I know he was proud of me at that time, but I really wish he could have seen what I have been able to accomplish, right? And that's actually something that's been hard for me is to, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, what you've done is absolutely amazing. And I think it's only been the last couple of years that I've been able to say to myself, you should be proud of what you've done, right?
Yeah. But I would have been surprised if you said the other way, right? Like, it does not surprise me that you've worked and have created this environment that has allowed so many people to be successful from an associate and doctor side, but also provided this incredible experience from a patient side. Right. I know you're never satisfied with it. So it would be...
I drive all of you guys crazy. I know that. But I want us to be our best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to talk a little bit then about your father's inspiration towards My Eye Doctor, because there are pillars for My Eye Doctor, kind of things that you thought about are, this is all wrong, I'm going to make this different and fix it, right? But your father's story and his illness was one of those things.
Yeah,
right?
Amplified, right? So there were some other doctors that were involved kind of with the startup. And I think we all kind of talked a little bit about managed vision care, but honestly, it was complicated. We were spending more time when a patient came in trying to understand what they had and what they were entitled to rather than focusing on their eye care
Hmm.
and their needs and how to see their best and protect their vision for the duration of their life. And so there was conversation going around, but my father really amplified it because he was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, stage 4. So it was, pretty known at the beginning of the diagnosis that he probably wouldn't survive it. But he had choices to make, and he wanted to leave where he had grown up and go to Cleveland Clinic, and he wanted to pursue surgery and treatment and really try to fight it, which was, if you knew my father, that was a really big step for him. And
Mm.
I was glad that well, we didn't finish the other story, but I'll go back to that if you want to. I don't know
Yeah.
if I ever really got fired or I quit. I think it happened at the same time. But I was really glad that I got to spend the last few months with my father, the amount of time that I did, and that I was one of the last people with him when he passed, right? Like it was a very enlightening moment for my life. But I was so frustrated that the doctors were always talking about, is this covered by his insurance? We have to get authorization. And in the end, when I think he knew that he wasn't going to make it, that was kind of the cherry on the top for me. So we
Mm.
knew we were going to have to pay for a private ambulance to take him from Cleveland to back to home. But getting a doctor to accept responsibility, because what if he passes away during the commute? Insurance wouldn't cover it. Like, I felt like, so I was just so frustrated that no one was listening to us, that we just needed to get him home. For him to see his family and friends before he
Right.
passed was really, really important to him. And, being isolated in Cleveland was not healthy for him at that point of his life. So again, going back, it amplified that we could have a great business, that we could be the insurance experts, we could specialize, we could make it. And so that was 23 years ago. I created, what we called routing slips, right? That really calculated for the patient for every sub plan and plan that they had, understanding not only how they could maximize their insurance benefits, right, but
Right.
how they could use that to help them see their best too at the same time. And so it was very manual when we opened and saw our very first patient, but it's continued to be escalated. And now, as you all know, in the company, it's very automated and will continue to improve over the next year or two.
And I think that that principle is the part that is for me the most important, in that you experienced the period when you all you wanted to do is take care of your father, and
Hmm.
we've all been there, right? You've
Hmm.
got a family member, and all you really want to do is to make sure that family member is taken care of. And there were so many things in the way that had to deal with, well, who's getting paid for this and who's going to be responsible for that. And in in our world, being able to have a patient come in and have an experience, and in the end, we are able to tell them exactly what they have coverage for. But that's not how we conduct the exams. It's not how we run the appointment. It's all about, make sure you get everything that you need. And here we can explain to you what it is that your insurance company will cover along with your visit.
Agreed. And then, you have to couple that with the fact that when the patient comes in, overall, they know more, and it's our industry's fault. It's not the patient's fault, but they know more about their iPhone and what operating system they're on than they do on understanding the lenses and the choices that they have to see their best, whether it's contact lenses or eyeglasses, right? As a industry, like if I have two personal goals. It's one, to help consumer education.
Mm.
I get very frustrated, and I love being able to speak today to you. I get very frustrated when people think that an eye exam is giving you a new prescription for your glasses or
Mm-hmm.
contacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does, and it helps you see the best. But at the same time, thinking about your eyes as being your most precious sense, like it's not one you want to lose. So things like glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, like as you know, I just Thursday got another annual eye exam. I'm very religious about all of my health. It's not
Absolutely.
just my eye exam, but every part, right? Because
Right.
I believe your health is your wealth,
Right.
as my husband says. So, patients, there's so many different options out there, and it's concerning when patients say, well, I can't adjust to progressives, because I want to say, well, were you really wearing the right one? Were you fit properly,
Right.
right? Because there shouldn't be a reason why most patients can't have a pair of glasses that meets all of their needs.
That's right. I fully agree with you. And I think there's lots of work to be done in our industry to help people understand more about how they can be actively involved in their overall visual health,
Mm-hmm.
but also how their visual health really is an indicator of their overall and general health.
Correct.
And the two things work together. And I also completely agree that the technology that is involved in eyeglasses, eyeglass lenses, contact lenses. It's amazing technology. And if given the level of explanation that people get for dental things or their iPhones or the technology in their cars, if we need to spend more time helping people understand the technology that is available to them to help them feel and see better.
Right. Absolutely.
So we're in 2001, and you've got the concept now with MyEyeDr.
Mm-hmm.
You are an insurance or managed vision care expert. We've got doctors who have been established and practiced in their communities.
But I don't think we knew originally that that was part of the recipe.
Ah, okay.
I think that happened naturally, right?
I see.
So we had a lot of great doctors, Dr. Arnie Miller, one of the first doctors, Dr. Schroeder, like the list goes on and on. And they knew that we were opening up. And so they started connecting with us and saying, listen, if you come to this area, to Rockville, to wherever, I'd love to join you again. And so it wasn't until a doctor one day, she actually never worked for us, but she called and said, listen, I'm just leaving, a competitor's, and I don't have any place to go. Are you looking for a doctor? And so I started saying, well, who were you working for and what happened? And as she told me the story, I realized that it was our Dr. Kaisemore. And he had the files and the phone number. And so right away when I contacted him, it started coming together that we had a great model, right? We had a platform, a technology platform, a platform so that it was what I say is the concierge service, so that the folks that work in our office can really focus on the patient care and we can do the business systems behind the scenes, right? And so I describe us as a company it's an eye care management company brought together by a group of offices, and we really help them, practice the best that they can. But that clarified that, okay, the doctor has the relationship with the patients. I mean, if you look at any of the studies, and as you and I discuss, more patients want to go to an independent doctor for an eye exam.
That's right.
Why? Because they feel like it's a more thorough, it's more healthcare focused, right? It's more than just getting a refraction. They don't always understand that definition,
right.
but there's a reason why they're doing it. And so it came clear within the first 6 months that we couldn't do this alone without partnering with incredible doctors in every community and really letting them bring out the care in that office.
When you think about all the things that were going on, though, in that period of time,
oh gosh,
it was, the timing maybe could have been better, but it worked, right? But we're talking September to October of 2001.
right? We had put, all of us had put some contribution that was putting significant capital contributions. For me, I really adjusted my salary for the first several years of my eye doctor because we knew that we had a good platform, but you couldn't control, much like we couldn't control a few years ago, COVID. In 2001, we had the terrorist attacks, 9/11 happened, and we were opening up October 1st. And so I think we all looked at each other and thought, what is going to happen, right? Because you had that instant moment of panic that people just were going to live differently, that the world was maybe coming to a different ending than we thought it was going to happen. And then, as you know, we were based in the Washington, D.C. market. So shortly after we went through 9/11, we got the sniper attacks.
Right.
And that paralyzed us. We were afraid to go outside. We were afraid to walk through a parking lot. We were afraid to put gas in our cars. And so I mean, it wasn't even like you knew it would be over at some point, but it was just the uncertainty of how are people behaving like this and why are they doing this? And then how's that going to impact the business?
And so you're dealing with all of these external factors. You're trying to get the business started, and Alex and Grant are still kind of learning about things at this point, right?
Yeah, they're 4 and 11 years old, right?
And so I've heard you talk a lot about as the offices begin to grow. You would be in the offices. You would bring Alex and Grant would come to the offices with you sometimes, and they got to be little operators, right?
They got to be little operators. Well, so the other thing that happened, Artist, as you know, 6 months after I opened the company, and it was the night we were opening our Falls Grove location. So our third office, my husband at the time and the father of the children passed away that evening. So then I had to be really resourceful, right? Because I was a single parent. My whole family lived very far away. They lived 5 hours away. My father, who was the closest person to me, had just passed away 6 months earlier. And so, and I really had invested, like I had a full commitment in this. Like there was no turning back at that point. And so Alex and Grant grew up in the business. They literally, and I became so resourceful. So I moved Grant to a school literally around the corner from us because at least I could spend more time with him at 4 years old in the car in the morning, on the way back, right? We'd get a lot of good time. I could run over and have lunch with him or check on him or something. So you have to think differently when you're in those kinds of situations, right? I don't think you can give up. I think you just have to breathe and say, okay, what are my options and what's going to work best during that situation? But Grant knew how to, edge a pair of lenses at the age 11. He knew how to, we used to have AOL at that time. And so that dial-up will forever stay in a lot of our minds I can't make the noise of it, but the kids used to help me check the bank balances in the morning to make sure payroll was going to clear. And, they were going to office meetings. And, I'm really, really committed to customer service.
Yeah.
And so a couple of my favorite moments, one of my favorites was, they had listened in an office meeting and we had talked about that the phones really needed to be answered by the third ring. That's before we had an online schedule or anything. And so that Saturday we went to the office to drop off supplies and take care of a few things, and the phone was ringing off the hook. And Grant said, hello, he said, I'm too young to answer the phone, but I think we heard on Wednesday night that we need to answer the phone by the third ring. Someone help me, please.
That's the absolute best.
Yeah. And there's 1,000 of those stories. My kids, I think they love I know they love my eye doctor. I think they, sometimes were incredibly patient growing up because it was such a big part of our life and it was my survival at some point. But at the same time, they think of it as my third child, right?
Full disclosure, Alex still works in MyEyeDr, and he's and it's really interesting, to work with a founder because there are lots of things that are, I think, different if you work in a founder-led organization. And with Alex having been there from literally day one, it is some of the things that he thinks about or he points to, I think are super beneficial to add to the organization. And so it's great that he's decided that he's going to build a career within MyEyeDr too.
And some of the things we talked about, like thinking differently, right? Like the kid really does understand that we can't do things the same way, but he does take away, he's really good, first of all, at not bringing business. Well, he's not perfect at it. Okay. But we have a rule that we can talk about business for X amount of minutes when we're together, like at a family dinner or something, and then we need to go back because it's not fair to everybody else. And it's honestly not good for either one of us for our whole life to be about the business.
That's right.
So, but he understands that while we grow and while we shift and do things different, that ownership mindset, like Alex cares about every person the same way that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those things that you can't make that up artificially, right? Like it's ingrained and he understands it that way.
Right.
So 2001, we got the business open. We are getting phone calls now for people, hey, if you ever going to be in my area. And so things are progressing,
Right.
and you're adding offices in the DMV,
Mm-hmm.
the Washington, D.C. market, for those who don't know DMV.
Yeah. Right.
But even though you were extremely successful and you were growing in that market, you are really responsible for bringing something absolutely brand new to this industry and to this profession. And so talk a little bit about that, because that happened somewhere around 2012.
Yes, yes. So the other co-founder is a phenomenal business person, and he was not working in the business full time. He was really leading our real estate strategy. He is an optometrist, so he was having the initial conversations with doctors who were partnering with us and so forth. And he's a very visionary, strategic person. But the balance was very hard, right? Because he leaned more towards the business side of the outcomes. And I was very focused on, okay, how are we going to hire a human resources person, or how are we going to invest more in a learning
Mm-hmm.
management system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we had a little bit of a different, well, I know we had a lot of a difference about just thinking about how some of the investment should go in the future of it. And again, I'll go back. I had the experience of running 400 plus offices, and he had really done 23 offices, right?
Right.
So it wasn't that one of us was wrong. It was just really different. And where were we going to go, and how scalable were we going to be? And so I believed in MyEyeDr and what our platform was so significantly. And I know he did too. But as the capital contributor, he didn't want to go beyond that
Mm-hmm.
bubble of where it felt really comfortable, right? Where it
Right.
felt resistant, that if there was economic or more 9/11, God forbid, or something like that, that it felt safe in that zone. And so, at the time we decided, okay, we both want something different.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very much an investor all around. And so we came up with let's bring private equity into the industry, right? Which that was a disruptor, right?
Right.
Like we think of some of the things today, like, there's competitors that we think as disruptors. But if we just even think about streaming services with Blockbuster, or Barnes and Noble and the Kindle, like there's just so many examples. Well, we really were, I don't think we realized that we were the disruptor, but we
Mm-hmm.
were the disruptor, and how private practice connected and looked differently, and how they came about.
And I mean, I think that's a large question that I often wonder is, one, do disruptors tend to know that they are disrupting or doing something that is going to change the face of whatever industry they may be in? And do other people know that this is a disruption at that time, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that, right? Because it felt so natural to do that
Mm-hmm.
it didn't, I mean, of course the industry was like, what did you just do, right? And
Yeah.
how's this going to impact? And now it's part of our industry overall, and not just on the eye care provider side,
Right.
but it's on the vendor side. It's in all components of it. I think that, there's a lot of controversy, obviously, across the nation about private equity. And first of all, I think they're really smart people. But as a founder, like, it's your business. You
Mm-hmm.
you have to help them. I mean, they invested in you, and they invested in your team and your company, because it was a solid asset, right? It was
Right.
something that they believed in. And so it's like a new marriage or something. Like, you have to figure out how to bring this partnership together to use the talents and expertise and skills that they have, but still continue to direct and drive your company. And I think as a country, while there's a lot of controversy over this, I think we should be driving private equity to help us more with the outcomes of
I,
healthcare, of, making our businesses better, not thinking it's just for the profitability.
I fully agree with you. And I think that is one of the points that if we could say it louder for the people in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really important that having investment in in your business should help to forward how you think about your business and help it become more scalable to touch more lives. It doesn't have to change the philosophy of your business.
Right.
And I think in a lot of regards, people allow their investors to make decisions that fundamentally change the philosophy of their business. And that change does not necessarily benefit anyone but the investors.
And sometimes I don't think they mean that, right? I think that they don't, like, I mean, first of all, like in all situations, there's people that are just in it for the profits, right? So, like, there's people who do bad things, there's people who do good things, right?
Yes.
But I think that sometimes they don't know who's driving, and one assumes the other one needs to drive. And so I think that's what makes My Eye Doctor so special, because I am one of the co-founders, right? And it's not just a consolidation to me. It's truly being able to help our patient, reach more patients, give them better eye care, help our associates. I'm so proud of some of the things we've done the last year with our associate journeying and career frameworking and all those things. And while it's going to take another year or two to get them fully marinated the way we want them to, it's going to be a really exciting time for the associates in our offices.
Yeah.
But I think, you've got to clearly define the relationship, and you've got to make sure you continue to own what you signed up for.
That's right. And so the investment in 2012 allowed for My Eye Doctor to leave the confines of the DMV and
come to the great state of North Carolina. Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I think are significant about that. I think that if you look at the way patient care has been driven, patient care in North Carolina from an optometry perspective was different than patient care in the DMV.
Correct.
Right? And so I think it allowed for My Eye Doctor to bring a needed focus for patients on being able to stay whole to the practice, which they want to do because of having a different look at products to go along with the services. And then I think from a North Carolina perspective, the broader spectrum of services were able to help bring a different flavor to the DMV offices, and that synergy really...
Absolutely. You took the two strengths of each organizations or two parts of the country and you put them together, right? And it really helped to strengthen the future direction of My Eye Doctor. Which
really led in the growth of the organization. So if you think about 2012 and entering North Carolina, then it wasn't long after 2012, 2014 and 15, where you were growing outside of North Carolina and into the Southeast.
Right.
And what was it like, the transition from your first private equity partner to your second private equity partner?
So the way I define it is, I think there's different, and by the way, I'm not an expert in private equity. These are just my experiences, right?
Absolutely.
Take them for what they're worth. But I think there's different levels of private equity. So I think the first private equity firm and partners that we had was kind of like your entry. They're like your dating partner. So they helped us grow up, right? We didn't have a board. We didn't have governance. We didn't have an ERP and accounting system. Like, we use QuickBooks, right? So they started putting in the plumbing for the house and started putting in some structure, right, to help us navigate. And your question about North Carolina, like, when we first came to North Carolina, like, I think we thought it was going to be really different than it was. Like, as you know, personally, the first, 7 to 8 years, I really worked in clinic almost every single day, right? Like, I wanted to touch associates. I wanted to interview every associate. I wanted to see patients. I wanted to make sure that what we were putting together was truly working. And I can remember being in Dr. Sheffer's office in Charlotte and just stopping the My Eye Doctor team and getting everyone off the clinic floor, and saying, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, this, what we came to town with, the plan we had is not going to work here, because there was a really big difference in how we practice. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to learn more from them and understand how they recommend, and then at the same time teach them what we do and what we do well to put it together. So that was interesting. But then going back to private equity, I think we outgrew it because we were growing so fast. So thinking about and being able to attract, a chief financial officer or a human resource executive, whatever it is, really helped us with our second one.
Mm-hmm.
So our second one was kind of the grown up. We're no longer a teenager, we're an adult, right?
Mm-hmm.
They helped us go to markets way beyond what was safe in the Southeast. So
That's right.
thinking about Chicago, thinking about Boston, right? And saying, okay, let's continue to expand the brand and the model. But really thinking about customer segmentation and understanding why our patients were choosing us, what they needed, and why they wanted it. And so we really grew up, I think, to a whole new level then. And then it's just been, and by the way, I want to thank each and every one of the private equity firms that we've been partners with. I think, I've had fun working with a lot, I've grown a lot. But they've added great value into my eye doctor. And then it was a huge compliment, as you know, for our last private equity transaction in 2019, which was our largest. And that's when I think you're with the big players, right?
Right.
And, so I'll say, first of all, it was Goldman Sachs, which was a big name. And I didn't even understand until we did it how big it
How
really
big?
was.
Yeah.
But I want to give as much accolades to Charles Bank, too, because they were in round one. And I think that was really special to come back and want to be in round three with us, too.
Right.
And how much it told how much they believed in the company.
And I think that speaks volumes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's got to be fulfilling for them to be able to see where there was no infrastructure, really develop the infrastructure, and then see where the company has gone and be able to now contribute ideas and thoughts differently because the company is in such a different place than it was.
Yeah, it's been really interesting and fun. A lot of good conversation we've had with them.
And so,
I mean, I grew so much from.
I think we all do every day. Like there's always something that's new or different that you don't really expect, and it's hard because there aren't other players that are really dealing with some of the things that we deal with in the manner that we want to deal with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we think about Sue, where you are today, it's hard for me not to ask two things. The first is, what advice do you have for people who are faced with some of the things you are faced with about thinking about something differently or trying to create something to fill a need that maybe other people don't know about?
So my biggest advice about this is, and this is harder to do than to just say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's removing fear from your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if we think about some of the tragedies we've all had in our lives, right? Say, you're a daughter and you lose your father, right? And say your father has a heart attack and passes away like that day, right? Everybody who attends the service or whatever, religious burial that they have, they all start talking about, I'm going to live my life differently, right? They start talking about, I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to exercise. I'm not going to work as much. I'm going to spend more time with my kids, right? But then life just allows us to go back to our normal. And so 6 months later, when you look at those same people who were grieving over the loss of a significant life, they really have forgotten about it, right? Unless they're, of course, the daughter or somebody close. But even then, you don't see them changing their life significantly, right? I had a lot of punches, 1, 2, 3, 4s. And what I realized is that prior to them, I was living my life in fear. I was afraid, like prior to my eye doctor, I was afraid like even on the days, and we all drive to work and we're really unhappy with work some days. Like things sometimes just don't go the way we want them to. We don't agree with everything. Sometimes we don't agree with our spouses, right? Partners. We're frustrated and it's easy to say, I just don't want to be part of this anymore. But if you start to think why you feel that way, I think a lot of it's because of fear, right? So with a partner, it may be, well, maybe you feel insecure in the relationship and you're afraid it's going to end. So it's easier to say end it rather than having that person reject you, right? Maybe with your job, you don't really give it all your contribution, so you don't get more opportunities that you want. And so maybe the people you're frustrated at isn't the source. Like maybe it is, but maybe you're also not contributing and learning as much.
Right.
And so, I don't know how to express it appropriately, but when I remove fear from my life, because honestly, everything that could go wrong really did go wrong. And I had a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old looking at me, right?
Yeah.
And I love my 2 boys. They're the best thing in my life. And I just wanted to be able to give them as normal of a life as we could, even though there was all these changes, the loss of their father, the loss of their grandfather, and many, many more things. But I think when you do that and you believe in yourself and you have an open mindset that you're going to come up with a solution, when the daycare center closes and you're at work and you don't have anyone to pick up, like just breathe for a minute. Just think about what you have and be able to utilize those. You don't need to bake cookies for every bake sale or school birthday, right? Like there's other people that can do this. And I'm not talking about having money to go to the most expensive. I'm saying like your next door neighbor is your friend, right?
Right.
And so, sorry, I'm going on, but I think removing fear.
Well, I think that's actually really, really impactful to think about, because we don't always realize the resources that we have around us. And part of what holds us back is not being brave enough or willing enough to ask, right? And so, when you talk about removing fear, it can be that element of I'm afraid to ask for help, which is something that holds a lot of us back. And so I think the braver we get to understand that you can ask, and the worst is that they'll say, no, I'm not going to do that, right?
Right. Or even if you try for something new, you try for a part in a play, or you try for a new job. I mean, what's really going to be the worst thing?
Right.
I mean, does failure feel so bad that we don't want to try something, right? That could be really good for us. And of course, artists, we're not touching on, there are a lot of boundaries in life. So there's some organizations and some systems that don't let you try, right? Or they discourage you from trying. But, I've always lived my life, and I've told my kids, like, don't let one person stop you. Like, figure out a way around them, under them, over them, right? But you just got to keep trying.
And that always leads me to, then what's next? If you think about all the things that have led you to this moment, and now we've talked about the basis of removing the fear piece. When you look forward, is there something in particular that you look towards for next?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people, especially when you're a founder or co-founder, like if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, I can never imagine MyEyeDr not being part of my life, right? Now, I can tell you 10 years later, I think MyEyeDr is going to be a different part of my life in another 10 years or 15 years, whatever that is, right? And it's not because I don't want it. It's because I have to make sure that I'm developing a team that can carry it on. I'm not doing my job if I'm the pivotal person or the core of the company, right? So I owe it to everybody, our patients, our associates, our partners, our executive team, our investors, like everybody, to make sure that I'm, and life happens. So like I always have to make sure that there's a succession plan in place if anything, gosh forbid, was to happen to me. So I'm finding a lot of time, first of all, when you talk about mentors, I didn't have one significant mentor who's carried me along. I've had a lot of different mentors, and different people have had some kind of meaning to my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't be where I am without them taking some time and really helping me or having that impact. So one of my things right now, as you know, I'm very, and actually Dr. Cobain is a great mentor of mine and a motivator. So I've spent a lot of time with High Point helping the female leadership program. In another week, I'm speaking with the OWA, Optical Women's Association, right, on mentorship and so forth. So helping female leadership and young leaders continue to go forward is a big part of how I'd like to spend my time. I'm also just starting some board work. I've been on a lot of boards within the industry that have helped in local communities or the Vision Council or, the Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind, all those things. But I would like to, as I grow, and as I mature, as I tell you, not age, everybody, but I want to continue to be the ambassador and the chairwoman or the leader for MyEyeDr, right, to make sure it continues in the right guidance. But understanding that there's going to be a lot of new people with a lot of different thoughts, and I have to accept that, right?
That's right.
And then helping the young leaders. And then the third bucket is I do like the idea of the board work, but I only want to be involved in organizations that I feel are like MyEyeDr, that we have a purpose and that why they want me to be a board member, that my skills can actually contribute something. So I think, I'm never going to be done working. I love working. I love it. It's not work to me. It's life.
I think that's where you want to be,
right?
Where you're doing what it is that you feel is your purpose. Because once you reach that, then it isn't work, right? You are actually moving towards fulfilling your purpose, which feels completely different than it does when you're going to work.
Yeah. I think I have a lot of untapped things I haven't even touched on yet,
It has been a phenomenal 10 years working together, and I say this in all honesty. You have challenged me more than I think I've ever been challenged, but it has been fantastic because I've learned so much more about what I can do, how I think about things, how I can apply what I think about things, and for that I really do thank you.
Well, I thank you and the whole entire team. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to lead such a high-performing, highly committed team, and to see your growth. And you are especially important to me and my family. We personally care about you. And I just love how you've grown in the industry and the impact. When I talk about my second, cause, which I didn't as much, on helping to shape and form the profession, you, my friend, are doing this, right? And so you're an extension of being able to do something, because I'm not an optometrist, that can help the profession and have touched so many lives outside of MyEyeDr. So thank you. I
really, truly appreciate the opportunity. And, I am happy that you were able to come and sit and talk with me today. I look forward to being able to have you back, and we'll have Sue Downs Part 2.
Okay, that's great.
Because there's so many other things. We spend an hour and we kind of talk about, we almost lay the base layer, and now we might have to come back and add some of the things on top.
I'm signed up.
Well, most excellent. So I do hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you back in the office.
Thank you.
And so we end another episode. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. I certainly appreciate all your support, so if you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share, the more opportunities we will have to bring you great guests and their remarkable stories. And if you want to know more about the guests, get background information on previous episodes, or just learn a bit more about me and the show, visit us at uncommonlyremarkable.com. Feel free to leave me a comment or a suggestion, and if you want to be featured on the show, click the Contact Us button. Until next time, stay remarkable.